Welcome back to another episode of the Twistedtubz podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Turbley, aka Twistedtubz. He is the Hellraiser, Nicholas Vince. Nick, welcome so much for coming on the show.
That's my pleasure. That's my pleasure. Lovely to see you again, Tubbs.
You too, my friend. It's been way too long. I think it was Fright Fest was the last time we actually physically saw each other, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that's at least 2 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's
until the world flipped upside down.
Yes.
But no, I'm delighted to finally get you on because, look, as I said, I know you're busy and everyone's trying to fit things in. So it's like brilliant when I can finally sit down and talk to someone, especially yourself, because as I said, every time I do talk to you, it's like shut up, Tubbs, because I go on and on and on. Every set I've ever been on, that's been said at least once or twice.
Shut up, Tubbs. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, I mean, look. Without like stalling in, I'm going to ask you straight off the bat, right? Because I ask all my guests this, right? And this is how I phrase it. I was like, Nicholas Vince, what is your origin story? What inspired you to go in the direction of acting, and what kind of brought you on that path to kind of starting where you started and kind of like continued on for, correct me if I'm wrong, almost 3 decades in the industry?
Well, kind of. I will correct you slightly.
Yeah.
I've certainly been around for 3 decades. I wasn't acting for took a long period out. I love the phrasing of the question, what is my origin story? I suppose it's like many people. I was just, at school as a kid, just really interested in drama, theatre, film. Really think as a kid that I would ever end up on film. But definitely did all the drama I could. I think for 2 reasons. A, I'm a show-off, if we're honest about this. I just love communicating. Yeah, I love to communicate. As one of my drama teachers said, it's the urge to communicate, just share what's going on in my head. I was buzzing and fizzing all the time. And I think, so there was that. And then I think, particularly through a fairly difficult teenagehood, in terms of sexuality and other stuff, and I was bullied massively at school, and also some hospitalization stuff and so on. I found it very useful. It was a way of connecting with people. I think drama classes are wonderful things for people to learn how to experiment, learn communication, but also experiment with who they are, what they are, being other people. I think when you're a teenager, the question, who am I? What do I want to be? These big, important questions as you're growing up. Not for everyone, but I think, for a lot of people, it's just trying to establish who you are and find out who you are. Are you attracted to boys, girls, both? I think it's it is, and I mentioned when we were chatting earlier on, Lynn Shay, who's been on my show, The Chattering, talks about acting as being the only place, a safe space in which to tell the truth. And I think that was that is kind of my origin story, that through all that drama stuff, all that emotional need, that's how I got into it. So I was doing amateur shows right up until 21, till I actually went to drama school. That's kind of how I got into the business.
That's brilliant, man. Because I was the same. I was a small kid. I'm still small now, but obviously I'm older. I would say that was, but
you're a young kid. Yeah.
I was a young kid, but I was small,
yeah.
So I easily I was that small target. And then I was a lightning rod of energy then as well. Like I couldn't slow down. That's the joy of the ADHD brain, Nick. Do you know what I mean? You just can't slow it down, and then I had kids of my own as years went on, and then they slowed me down because that's just the circle of life as it goes. No, but I love the origin of it, because as you hit on the drama side of it, and it is that thing, because I think yourself when you're a teenager, you don't really don't know. I think you know at the time who you want to be and where you are, but you really don't have a clue about the world. You haven't experienced it. But the fact that drama has always been in you, it kind of shows as you get older. And I think that's kind of something I've always said to even my own daughter is, kids have massive imaginations, but if you can hold on to even a fragment of it in your adult life, then that's a win. because,
Yes.
so many adults kind of lose it in the grain of life, and actors like ourselves, we tend to hold on to that Peter Pan, instincts. We want to be young forever in here, you know what I mean?
Yes, and I think and I realise, I think, if I'm going through something at the moment, which I'm not going to be talking about for at least a couple of months, one of the first things I've done is to take up animation. When I was a teenager, just to kind of, so I can get pictures out of my head and movement to explain what it is, so I'm thinking about what it is I'm going through, and but from a slight step away. And when I was a teenager, I wrote a lot. It wasn't necessarily stories, it was just get stuff out of my head. I remember when I was a teenager, somebody just saying, "Nick, you think too much." I thought it's because I constantly analyze everything, constantly have to try and understand what's going on, and so on. I think this is part of creativity for me. It's like, okay, well, if I'm going to be suffering, I'm going to make some art out of this. I'm going to be productive, I'm going to be productive about this. If I'm scared, I'm going to write horror. If something scares me or concerns me or angers me, or, I'm going to write something about it. Or, if there's, and I think it's kind of what we do as artists anyway. We bring our own truth to a situation, to a character, to a person, to a piece of art. I think that's our job as artists, is to bring our own truth to something.
I think leading into that, as you were saying about bringing, the images and the animation, which I think is awesome, actually, because during the pandemic, I started a graphic novel, which.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I can draw. I realized I can draw. For years I could, and then I kind of was writing and I was doing acting things, and then I realized, oh yeah, I picked it up again one day and it's drawing like Jason Voorhees and sort of things, and then I started drawing like turning my sister into a superhero and turning me and my maid into like crazy characters, and I was kind of going like, I mean, this is probably going to be a 4 or 5 year project, but I'm doing it in my own time, and I'm kind of chipping away with it as I go.
Brilliant.
Yes, but I love that you're saying about the animation, because as you were saying about getting things out of your head and just visually, just designing things that are in here on a page or on a screen. That's a different format, but it's the same thing. It's creativity. But
yes,
designing characters and then bringing them to life, that is something you've been doing since your earliest days. So you know where I'm heading with this. Walk me through Hellraiser 1 and 2. Because it's to this day that character is still iconic. Look, I have it here, Nick, actually.
Yeah, you do. I noticed your prop. Well done. Yes.
That is the one that you signed for me on set when you were doing your movie Necessary Evils. That was that one.
Yes. And I noticed I managed to give you a long S on the...
Yes.
Which is, again, something I'm working on at the moment, is another creative piece at the moment, is getting some artwork based around about the history. Well, I'm starting with the ampersand. I've been fascinated, and long S is going to be one of the series. Managed to not answer the question you asked me. What a surprise. Hellraiser, so basically I went to a party. I was at drama school with Simon Bamford, who eventually played Butterball in Hellraiser, and I met Clive Barker there, and we got on well. We became very good. We became very, very good friends, and basically when it came to Hellraiser, he wanted actors to play the monsters, not just. Now we always knew that Chatterer was never going to have lines.
Yeah.
So there was a strong argument that they could have just hired an extra. The difference between an extra and an actor on film sets is basically an extra gets paid a lot less, and they don't have lines, and they won't appear in the credits. An actor gets lines and works for equity. I mean, Hellraiser is equity minimum with a buyout. So yeah, that's how it came about. Clive cast actors, and he wanted to cast people who were his mates, but he worked with and knew and wanted to. I mean, in the case of Chatterer, and this is the subject of my one-man show, I Am Monsters, the whole origin story of something I went through when I was 19 inspired the look of Chatterer, so it's kind of natural that I should play it. But Clive did fight hard to get me involved. In fact, the problem was that I was too good looking. It sounds terrible. I'll show you what I mean.
Go on.
I think I can actually get a prop to actually show. Come back into the view again. So yeah, no, I have a prop here. So when I left drama school, and this is what I look like.
That's a young Nic Vince right there, people.
Yeah, that was me, you know, this is me at what? 23, 24, mid-20s. So that's what I look like. Now, that isn't an obvious casting for a monster. Oh. So I had to go out and get new headshots done. And I remember having a big cold sore, like I do at the moment, on my face when I was doing this headshots, and having to tell the photographer not to take it out because I needed to look mean, I needed to look tough, I needed to look like a thug. And I remember scraped all my hair back and oiled it. It just didn't look like, it didn't look anything like that. So, you know, there were all sorts of things that, you know, hurdles we had to go through before we actually got the part.
And what was, and obviously, because I mean, we've spoke about it like since like we first met to now, and like I've also kind of ended up I've dug into monster acting as well. Thanks to Paddy Murphy,
now Paddy Murphy, who we referred to earlier on, Paddy Murphy told me because he was directing you in that costume, and said, apparently every time you complained, he just said Nic had it harder on Hellraiser.
Every single time, Nic. Every single time. So I was like, I'll just shut up and go back in the corner. So.
Nic had it
but yeah, because I mean, it just because I mean, I've gotten to experience it now. Now, to be fair, he did say Nic did have a horror because I could actually physically take the mask off whenever I needed to get out of it. The rest of it, not so much.
Yeah.
But you were in that thing all the time. Like, walk me through that experience. Like, it'd be like with it being within the Chatterer, like costume and everything else.
I think it's where this is part of the actor's craft.
Yeah.
You work within the restrictions that are placed upon you, and you use those restrictions to create your art. And this is true of everything. I guess, you know, there are certain limitations to what you can physically achieve. In Chatterer, because Clive's original vision of the Chatterer was that he would be leaping around the set like a chattering monkey. You know, the image of a chimpanzee chattering, baring its teeth and chattering. Was what Clive had in mind. But you put me in the costume, it was just made of leather, very tightly fitting leather. It was literally sculpted to my body because they took a body cast of me and the face, you know, and I couldn't really hear, speak or see when I was in it. I mean, I could speak, kind of. I could make myself understood, but I've got plastic teeth inside my mouth. So, you know, it's like talking, you know, you can make yourself, it's not. It's not the most effective way of communicating with people. Yeah, so there you have all those limitations, and therefore not being able to hear me, you can't really take direction. So they had to come up with ways of making sure that I could hit my mark, what we in the business refer to as hitting your mark. In other words, getting in center frame or wherever you need to be in the camera. Because it's easier to move an actor than it is to move a camera. So, you know, you walk into shot and so on. So it was just physically incredibly challenging, very, very challenging. And, you know, there were long days, there were 8-hour days in that makeup and costume. That was really interesting, but I'm very glad I did it.
I mean, I feel the same way about the perished one as well, because it's like when I look back at it now, I'm going like, oh man, it was such a good experience. I really like even you were saying about communication. Like I remember, because you've seen the film, there's points where I'm like this, but my head is tilted. That's just so I can see straight.
Yes, yeah. Funnily
But
enough,
it ended up looking creepy. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
Paddy used to talk into the eyepiece.
yeah.
Yeah,
Weird, wasn't it? You were
it's so weird.
There's a moment in Hellraiser where Chatter is pushing Andy Robin. I'm pushing the actor Andrew Robinson backwards, and rather than doing that, I'm doing that because that means I can see through the eye to actually see him, to be able to push him. And of course, it all comes from him, all the acting. You know, I wasn't physically pushing; he was reacting to what I was doing, but I was saying I couldn't physically push it because I might knock him over. So again, it's that. And the Chatter and so I had to do incredibly little. I just had to let the mask do its work because it's such an extraordinary image. I was watching a film called We Bought a Zoo, starring Matt Damon last night. And there's a moody teenage son and he's drawing all this horrific stuff. And you get a glimpse of his notebook and I said, "Great, that's Chatter. I swear he's drawing Chatter." It was Chatter without the hooks. Complete aside, but just because it's come up recently on my timeline. It is an iconic image. We talk about the Chatter. Somebody has made a planter for plants, and there's a beautiful, so basically it's the top of its Chatterer with the top of his head off with a plant sticking out of it. That's the timeline. So that's what I mean, you know, it is such an iconic, as it turned out to be such an iconic look. All those restrictions. Actually, I didn't need to do very much apart from physically move my teeth together and physically chatter the teeth and walk and not talk, hit my mark, chatter the teeth. That was all that was required from me. But I think
you look at it as well, Nick, it's one of those things where, like, we've heard it so many times over the years, is less is more. So I mean, are you just doing the thing with the teeth and especially with how you know every scene was designed to look and what was going on in you know,
oh yeah,
you know what I mean? That just all added to it, like, you know what I mean, to see like this figure with like basically no eyes and just teeth chattering. Like, it was, I mean, I remember it as a kid, and man, it was a horrific image. Like, you know, when I first laid my eyes on Hellraiser, I mean, I remember seeing that and I was going, oh my God, I don't like that at all. And then years later, I met the man inside the suit and I'm like, oh my God, he's amazing. You know?
Well, I think, yeah, and I think you've kind of alluded to it in your experience. It takes a lot of people to make a monster. It's not just the makeup artist, obviously hugely impressive. Well, you know, let's start with Clive and his vision for the Cenobites and the whole Hellraiser film. Then you've got in the script, and then you've got a producer, Chris Fick, come on board to actually find the money and then start assembling the crew. So you've got all of the guys at Image Animation who are responsible for the makeup effects. You've got Robin Vidgen, who was the director of photography. That's the guy who sets up the lighting and points the camera. They may well, on an independent film, they might well operate the camera as well, but on a fairly big, you know, bigger budget, there would be a camera operator themselves. And all those things, you know, the guys who actually physically built the steps, when we did the sets, when Chatter enters, I'm actually walking down a wooden ramp. It took them half an hour. They suddenly realized that walking across the floor, they couldn't get the angle they wanted. So they needed a 3-foot long ramp that was 6 inches at the top and the floor at the bottom. And it was just built within half an hour. To, you know, just the image you've got there, you've got, you know, the lighting image, the set, and as I said earlier on, you know, the way Ashley reacted, the way Andrew reacted, it's the way the people react to the monsters. That's what sells, you know, that's what sells and tells the story. So it's a huge production to be able to do these things well.
But I mean, when you look back at it, I mean, it was 87 first Hellraiser, wasn't it?
Oh.
It was 87.
Yeah, so we filmed in 86 and towards the end of 86 and it was released in 87.
I mean, so that's like a lifetime ago. And I mean, and you've gotten, as you've gone on, you've gotten to like change from beneath the teeth and the the whole head sculpt and everything, and actually bring your face forward. But before you did that, the next move then after that was Nightbreed, right?
Yes, absolutely. That was
to showcase your face in this.
Yes. You can. I could hear, speak, and see. Huge improvement. Being hidden underneath leather costume, so I had to dye my chest hair black because I'm a blonde. I was a blonde. Yeah, it's a very different experience and a huge thing. Very, very. Whereas Hellraiser and Hellbound, very much the same crew. I mean, the cast, a lot of the cast and the crew came back for Nightbreed. There was a small family of the guy. Robin Vigeant was the director of photography on the first 3 Clive Barker films, Hellraiser, Hellbound, and Nightbreed, and a lot of the crew, the lighting designers, the sound. Sound and so on. They were, and everyone, and people from Image Animation, the guys who did the makeup, we got to know each other really well by this. So for about 3.5 years, we Roy from Image Animation, who we're still in touch now. So yeah, a different experience, huge, just hundreds of monsters, and just really fascinating, really. And also I got to see and learn more about how movies were made, because when I was on set, I could actually see what people were doing. It was that classic moment. I mean, Doug's spoken about being at the Doug Bradley, I'm talking about Pinhead, has spoken about at the wrap party for Hellraiser and everyone wondering who the hell he was, because they'd not seen him out of makeup. And I remember a guy walking up to me on the set of Nightbreed when I was in full Kinski, and introducing himself. I said, "Yeah, we've made 2 films together already, but you won't recognize me as after this." So yeah, very different experience.
No, it's just harping back to what you were saying about Doug there. I actually had a moment like that at Fright Fest after we were there from Paris. I was actually, even in my own head, I was thinking, like nobody's actually going to know who the hell I am. I'm just going to be this random dude standing with Paddy and the lads because I was actually under a mask the entire movie. But you know what I mean? But as it says, I mean, just working with monster makeup, it's just, I mean, I know now, I can talk to you about it now. Before on Banshee and the Parish, I wouldn't have been able to kind of relate because I had just, it was always my face on screen. But being able to dive into a role that, like, I know if I can, and in a way, it's weird because you're restricted in a lot of ways because it's it's a big heavy suit and your vision's restricted. But I think it opens it up so much more because I think it takes away the they can't see your face, so you don't have to worry about what's going on here. You just have to make them you have to act. You still have to act 100%. Because I remember.
I think it's called intention.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think this is why Clive wanted actors in the makeups.
Yeah.
Obviously, for the females, like Doug, there were lines. Originally, Simon Butterball had lines, but they were taken away when they realised he couldn't speak in the costume. Bless him. It's a bad day for Simon. But for Jack, it is more. Yeah, you're restricted, but you've got to have the intention. You've got to have. I was reading an article about an article that F. Scott Fitzgerald, the author, had written about the iceberg principle in writing, that you only top 8% of the story, but there's a huge amount underneath that the audience will never get to see, may never be referred to. But as an actor, you've got to know what that background is. people will sense, he was saying, you know, a reader will sense the whole. If you omit something deliberately, an audience will understand that. If you omit it because you simply don't know, the audience will sense that. It's very strange. It kind of doesn't make sense, but I think it is very, you know, the way that F. Scott Fitzgerald was talking about the art of writing short stories. You've got to show, it's what we refer to as show, not tell. If you tell somebody something, then great, they know a piece of information. It's a great way of communicating science, yeah, to be very clear, and so on. But in art and human experience, you need to show people, because that somehow is more relatable for human beings to understand what it is. If you tell somebody something, it comes across expecting you to react. And human beings are not like that. As I think when we're underneath the mask, I'm sure you've found it on. Did you have a backstory? Did you have an origin story for your monster?
I spent Paddy will back this up, because he said it to me before. He said he didn't want to just put anyone in a mask. He wanted to put someone in that would, you know, like try and create it, like actually treat it like an acting role, even though it's just a creature. And that's kind of how I came at it. But I must have asked him 1,000 questions and said, like, you know, I was like, what's the motivation here? Why should I be, you know, going this way? And, you know, like, why should I be like articulating a certain way? And then, but in my brain, I had the story. It was like I was a child that was in the house, and you know, or not in the house, but it was like this festering thing of all these babies would fester together, and they just wanted to be reborn. And it was all this kind of thing in my head that I was going, I have to physically bring that. I'm not the villain. I just want to live. That was in my head. And then Paddy said that, like this is kind of on the lines of what we're going for.
Yes.
And in my brain, I kind of festered that. So each scene I was trying to like figure it out as I was going, or just kind of like treat it like, you know, if you would see my face and I was trying to do an acting role, I was trying to treat it like that under a mask to bring a physicality to it, but an emotion as well.
I was writing about this yesterday when I was approaching Chatter, is that earlier this week there's an interview coming out fairly soon, and is saying the fact that, you know, one of the things I relied on was that at drama school I'd done a mime class where we were told to bring in a cardboard box and to animate it as a character, but we weren't allowed to draw on the box. We weren't allowed to cut holes. We weren't allowed to alter the cardboard so the box went over your head. So it then became your body. Your body was the only thing that you physically could use to express what it was you were feeling, or the story that you had in your head. And I think, you know, the human beings are very clever at being able to spot the subtleties. It's this whole body language thing, you know, the micro expressions and so on. Just the way, as you say, you hold your head or look or something will communicate if your audience is empathetic, the way you are feeling and what's going on. And that's what you're not necessarily perhaps communicating the story. They'll never know what, but they'll understand the desire, they'll understand, and they need to know. You need to understand what it is you want, what this character wants from the other characters or the situation or what's going on.
As you were saying about writing there as well, Nick, this is what I'm going to throw in. This is, so you've since been writing and directing your own stuff as you've gone forward, and obviously writing other stuff as well. But what was that transition like for you? You know, being in front of it or behind?
What we were talking about earlier on, saying, you know, it's over 30, you know, it is 3 decades. I've been around for that length of time. Well, not quite, 25 years. 25 years.
Very close.
yeah, it's 25. Damn it. The writing, funnily enough, came, as I say, I'd written a lot, and then I left acting soon after Nightbreed to concentrate on writing comics for Marvel.
Wow.
And that new load of really fascinating people, artists, and so on. And then everything kind of dried up and I had to get a real job, and I ended up in computers for nearly 20 years. So I only really returned in 2012 when I got made redundant from my computer, from my proper job.
That's what happened to me.
Really?
Yeah, I was made redundant, and I just said, you know what? Now it's time to go after this acting thing.
Yes, yeah, I think you've just got to take these chances when you can, and it's so in that lucky, fortunate position. And then obviously I've done 3 short films now. I've written 2 volumes of short stories. As I say, I'm supposed to be working on the 3rd, but really haven't managed to find the time or the energy or the. It's been too horrible in the world to be concentrating on being horrible to my characters. I think it's like, but I think so. The writing gives you something. It's a completely different experience to acting. But having said that, I think it's a different form of the expression. I remember when I was at drama school, we did a play called The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I had a fairly small role. I didn't have one of the leads or anything. But I remember it was very important that my character believed in witchcraft, because that's the way the character was written. And I remember writing a letter as the character about what he believed and what he thought. And that became a tool. So having gone through that mental process and writing it all down, then every time, like more or less on the half hour before the curtain up, or probably, so if we were going up at 8, then probably around about 7:15, I would get there, or about, 7:25, something like that, and get the letter out and sit quietly in the dressing room, because by that stage I got myself into makeup and costume. The last thing I did was I read the letter, just to recall that mindset of a person who is going through that experience. And I think this is something about writing, is that you are, I joke from an editor saying, well, I'm just writing what the voices tell me, which I thought was quite funny. They didn't appreciate that joke. And it's that thing of your characters become real. They've got to be real in your mind. They are not voices, but they've got to be real enough to surprise you. If they do that, and I think there comes a certain moment, and other authors have spoken about this, where when you're writing, you think, okay, well, they do this, and to serve the story, they need to do this, but actually they wouldn't do that. Or actually, no, they're going to do something completely different. If I'm true to that character I've created, then that's it. And I think that's an important part of being a human being, by the way. This is empathy. This is understanding how the ability to understand other people's stories is hugely important to our success as human beings. I'm very judgmental as a person, and can get very short-tempered, and I can get get so frustrated and angry. And the line I've been coming up with, and a lot in the last year or so, particularly during lockdown, is like, I don't know their story. I do not know what is going on in this person's life. I do not know what is going on now. I do not know what their history is. I do not know what their circumstances are. I can be very short-tempered and get very frustrated and so on.
I think we all are guilty of that.
Yeah, and particularly at the moment, because it's just like stress trying to do something. So I remember, I regret that I was losing. I'll tell you what I was doing. I was out leafleting for the Green Party, because in the UK, in London particularly, we've got the mayoral elections. We've also got local elections, and we've got the London Assembly elections. And I joined the Green Party at the end of last year, just because I thought this is just so overwhelming. The whole thing about the climate, etc., is so overwhelming. Feel so helpless and think, well, idiot, why don't you do something about it? Why don't you join up? You know, why not join the political? I've never joined a political party. I think I did. I gave some money to Labour to support Jeremy Corbyn. Really regretted that decision. And again, I think Jeremy Corbyn's probably a very nice man, but you don't need a nice man as the leader of a political party. You need somebody who's actually deeply, deeply committed and can actually marshal the people around them to fight in some real problems in the Labour Party. But there was somebody we got to, where I live, there are an awful lot of tall blocks of flats. So you have to go past the reception in order to be able to deliver the leaflets. Now, some are fine, and somebody was, in my mind, being job served, and I just got really angry and just thought, and trying to intimidate him. Now, that did not work at all. Other people have tried, but you're not getting anywhere. And you think, okay, that Nick, you could have handled that, I could have handled that a lot better, and probably would have got the result I actually wanted if I'd actually just spoken to him like a human being, rather than a uniform who was not letting me get my own way. So I do regret that. So I think, can't remember what the question was, and I've done my usual thing of drawing in 3 or 4 different strands of thought.
Come here. All the strands of thought, men, bring conversation out either way, so it's all good, and it all varies into other things as well. But as you were saying there about human beings, I don't think we could like not mention it on the podcast about your time with Celtic Badger. That's where I first met you, Nick.
Yes. The wonderful, wonderful Celtic Badger. The wonderful, because I brought we filmed together. I brought the wonderful Dawson James with me as well.
Yes.
When we came over to film, and I know he got with you guys incredibly well.
Because it was Retribution started that, wasn't it?
Was it?
Retribution was that the first one that you?
Sorry, really, it was asleep last night, and yes, it was Retribution. Yes, it was. It's me playing an Irish priest and apologising to everybody.
You don't need to apologise for nothing, Nick. You were very good in this. And I remember when Paddy showed it to me, obviously he had mentioned, but when he showed it to me and I'd seen it, I was going to go, he was like, that's Nic Vince. I was like, no. And I was going, oh my God. I was like, Jesus, that's insane. And then it was just, and then obviously about 2 or 3 years later, I got to be on screen with you, which was crazy for me. I was going to say to you way ago about the Hellraiser, like watching Hellraiser as a kid, much like Paddy did and things. And then just be like sitting down, going, "Hey Nick, will you autograph my DVD box set of the Hellraiser for me? Because this is it right there, Nick. That intervention, baby."
Yeah.
That was it, yeah. So it was just like, so you're talking, because you were over a good chunk of times to work on.
Yes, it was a wonderful experience. And that's what I love about independent filmmaking, because of course Paddy was working on an Andy Stewart short film,
Remnant,
and asked me to be in Retribution whilst we were there. Love Paddy, absolutely adore him, as we all do. And it's I love the way you go, and Baz and Aaron and everybody else involved as well, obviously. I love the spirit of camaraderie and that family, again, that we talked. It reminded me of Hellraiser.
Yeah.
This sort of spirit of we're in this together and we're going to create something when we're doing Retribution, and so it was a wonderful set, and okay, we've got this problem, we're not allowed to film, it needs to stop now, so you can our way around the problems, and I knew that there were people there I could rely on and trust who could actually do stuff. So yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
Well, I mean, and it was like when I finally got to meet you, because if you remember now, I mean, you probably, I'm a little quieter these days. I think that's after 3 kids and getting a little bit older. But when you first met me, I was a lightning rod. Like I was just a hyperactive lunatic, really, like bouncing around the set. Like Paddy was like, "Tubbs, come here." I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry, I need to be on set and do my job now." You know what I mean? But
Yeah, but I think it's, it's Utubz, and it wasn't that, it wasn't that bad. You wouldn't be on the set if you know, as bad as you make it out. You'd be kicked off ages ago if you're that bad.
Completely.
But I mean, you were disciplined. You knew when to rein it in.
I did. I knew when to stop. I knew once it was game time to like drop it and go. Do you know what I mean? And kind of be where I needed to be and hit my marks and stuff. But I mean, like for me personally, Nick, getting to work with you and getting to just see you kind of like, you know what I mean? Obviously, since I grew up kind of watching you in movies and things, and then to actually sit there and actually just pick your brain and talk to you, like that was a great experience for me, especially on intervention, because we actually had a lot of downtime to like just sit down and chat. Which really helped me a lot as well going forward, and how I thought about like acting and mindsets and stuff. Because you actually said a lot of things that were very helpful to me on that set, which I appreciate.
Good. Just make sure you remember them and tell other people, because I won't remember them.
You know what we do? We say them out loud, right?
Yeah.
Pass them on to someone else. We forget them. Yeah. They move on. They forget them, and it's like a vicious cycle. That's what it is.
I think I think this is what's so important. I think this is one of the great joys of these collaborative projects of working on film set. I always do my best to support independent filmmakers and so on, because I was given only through Clive's love and generosity that I got the chance to to be in Hellraiser and work with him since. And Clive has been an incredible inspiration to me. And you just want to pass on some of that spirit of his attitude and so on, the way he works with people and so on. I've told the story before. What really impresses me with Clive is that when, in the days when he was doing, first starting out doing book signings and so on, people didn't just get an autograph. Thinking, didn't get anything. They got a drawing, usually obscene, and they got a conversation. And Clive is and still is really interested in people. And I think, and whenever I appear at conventions or I'm out in public doing that kind of thing, it is always Clive's spirit that I'm trying to channel, and his attitude to people and so on. Because without people who actually support the films, I mean, and to be honest, it's, again, I think one of the great joys of my life is being able to listen to people like yourself who been affected by the movies. You've got listening to how they're, I mean, it's weird. I've now got to understand when people say, you scared the hell out of me as a kid. That's a compliment.
Very much so, yeah.
I remember the first few times people said it, I was going, I don't know what I say like that. Apart from, what the hell were you doing watching Hellraiser as a kid? Because I don't think we intended it to be shown to children when we were making the film. No. But I've heard some wonderful stories over the years about how it's inspired people, and I've seen it, and and I think I've met makeup artists who have been inspired by the makeup in Hellraiser. To go on and have their own careers. And it was fascinating for the 30th anniversary. There's a big convention in London. Can't quite remember the proper title for it. International Makeup Artists Show, effectively, where all the makeup artists come together to find new products. And I actually got to meet Neil Gorton, the guy who did Kinski and Nightbreed, and who's done all the Doctor Who through Millennium FX, done all the Doctor Who makeups and so on. And Cliff Wallace, another one, met all these guys on their own turf. It was absolutely fascinating to hear them being interviewed and so on. So it was great.
Because obviously, like when the actors have been interviewed, there's obviously people behind the actors that have done jobs, and then there's people behind them again, which are involved in like creating the images we see on screen, which, I mean, as we said already on this episode, it's very much, you don't do it yourself. It's never one person. It's an entire circle of people.
It takes a village to make a monster. It really does. It really does.
But going on about one person, before we let you go here, we cannot speak, we cannot not speak about Nick Chattering's, or sorry, the Chattering Hour with Nic Vince, because that is that is what you're currently doing right now, my friend. So
Yes.
walk me through it. What brought it back, and just how has it been since you did it? Like are you enjoying the process?
I am enjoying I'm having to learn an awful lot of new stuff. So it came out of my manager, Chris Rowe, who's based in Los Angeles, during lockdown last year. Obviously, everything was shutting down over there. And it's kind of, a way of keeping his, well, Chris has spoken, I've interviewed Chris at the end of both season 1 and season 2. And season 1, December 31st episode, Chris explains more clearly why he put it together. It's been extraordinary. It really has been extraordinary. I've got to meet and chat with people who I have admired from years, for decades. I was talking to an actor called Monty Markham the other day. He's one of those faces who you would know, a voice you definitely know. He was in Baywatch. He was in We Are Still Here more recently. He's a writer, he's an actor. He was in Guns of the Magnificent Seven. And he's really just absolutely fascinating guy. And it's been so exciting for me to speak to many, I think how many shows I've done, 23, 24 shows. People like Dee Wallace, who I mentioned earlier on, people like Bruce Davison, who is in Willard. The story about the boy and the rats, working with Washburn's Borgnine, and Elsa Lanchester from, The Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Just extraordinary Malcolm McDowell, Tracy Lords. Honestly, I can't list all 20, obviously, and they're all absolutely, writers, directors. Daniel Krauss, who took on the novel art that George Romero hadn't finished. I've spoken to Suzanne Romero about George Romero's legacy and so on. And it's been a real joy and inspiration. And I think it's helped keep me going and inspired me to do stuff. It's been time consuming. I mean, it's been a lot of hard work because Chris, my manager, finds the guests, does all that bit and puts together the questions. But I'm doing all the editing. I'm doing all the animations. I'm doing doing a lot of the image research and so on. So it's a lot of hard work. But I think when I was talking to Chris about our end of season show, I was like, what I really hope is that although I'm talking to people who've been successful in the business for 30 years or more, 20, 30 years or more, I've had extraordinary careers. I really hope that it's watched by independent filmmakers. Not just for the story as how they got into the business, because everybody has their own path into getting into the business.
Their own journey, like.
Yeah, because they've got different opportunities, they've got different talents, and different circumstances. But what it is to be an actor. I mentioned Lynn Shay talking about truth as an actor. I found that incredibly profound statement and observation. And listening to Monty Markham talking about stuff, and listen to Bruce Davison talking about making one of the earliest feature films about AIDS as a straight man and why he did that. And so, these are extraordinary people. They've got some wonderfully funny stories to tell, which I absolutely adore. So that's part of it. But these people have been around for a long time. They've therefore got a lot of really interesting information and things to say. So it's been a joy. It is an absolute joy. We're on hiatus at the moment before we start again at the beginning of June the 3rd. come back on June the 3rd. But as I say, there are 2 seasons of shows for people to
That's
go and check
actually,
out.
so you're doing them in seasons, right?
Yeah, limited seasons. Yeah, I think we did 15 in the first. We did 13 in this. We're kind of sticking with 13 and possibly putting a 2-week hiatus somewhere within that 13. It was kind of the
Okay.
rhythm we've found. We'll take a break over summer as well before we start coming back towards the end of the year for season 4. And it's on the Chris Rowe Management YouTube channel, and it's on podcasts as well. And people
Spotify and things like that as well, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Spotify, Apple,
Perfect.
Podbean, and it's on all the major players. You can definitely, and it's fun, listening. I love listening to it. Funnily enough, I was listening to Clive Barker on the Mick Garris podcast, telling a story I'd never heard Clive tell before.
Yeah.
So that's on, I think it's on Dread Central. I don't know. I just happened to stumble across it yesterday, and I was listening to it yesterday morning. So yeah, lots more as a fascinating guests to come onto the show, but also just check out the ones that I've been talking to.
Yeah, because believe it, because I've been checking up, and there are some fantastic guests on your show, Nick. Some that I've been watching since like back in the day when you're looking, like you were saying about Blade and things like that. I mean, like there's like I've been like, oh my God, Jesus, that's a great actress, that's a great actor, and they're great guests. Yeah. And I'd look, as I said, I know you have to jet off because we're hitting around the 11 o'clock mark here now. But look, continue doing what you're doing, because I'm enjoying it, and I'm pretty sure everyone else is that's tuning in to watch you, right? But like every great story, Nick, and I hate to say goodbye because you know me, I'm a talker. I could talk to you about this stuff all day long, right?
Well, I mean, Tubbs, congratulations on the podcast, keeping it going, setting it up, and so on. I know how much work is involved,
Yeah.
but also, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing well and still being creative and so on. And give my love to the rest of the Celtic Badger gang.
I will, of course.
So I do miss them. I do miss them all.
Come here and watch
and everyone who's, thank you to everyone who's watching and listening as well. Take care, guys.
And go listen to Nick's stuff, right? Go check him out. Go watch Hellraiser and relive the nightmare.
Take care. Oh, and also I should say there are some films coming out recently. Paintball. I'm not even spoken about films.
Paintball Massacre.
I should also Paintball Massacre, Heckle. Fascinating. I really enjoy Heckle. They're outside, and there's another one.
If you have another hour to spare in 2-3 weeks' time or something, right? Come back on and we will just deep dive into all the movies.
Yeah,
we'll deep dive into all the movies. But look, as I said, I hate to say goodbye because every story has to have an ending. But Nick, this has been the Twistedtubz podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Tubley, aka Twistedtubz. He is the Hellraiser, Nicholas Berman Vince. Thank you very much for coming on, my friend. I hope to see you very soon.
You too, Tubbs. Take care and cheerio, folks.